During the Great Depression in New York City, Al Capone funded a soup kitchen serving more than 2,000 free meals a day. While known as coffee and donuts, it served tasty, wholesome meals. This shows that mobsters sometimes had hearts of gold. A family in the 1880s in Ireland huddles in a rough stone and turf hut after being kicked out of their home during the Land War. This fight over rent and land rights even gave us the word boycott. That comes from Charles Boycott, a land agent whose name became famous when tenants turned the tables on him. In 1926, Europe, a Romany family and a fox pose at the doorway of a wagon. Their wagon serves as both home and means of transport, reflecting the mobile lifestyle of many Romany communities at the time. Their expressions are calm and unbothered, used to this life on the road. The newly completed World Trade Center towers became a symbol of NYC in 1973. Their tube-frame design allows unprecedented height while using less steel than earlier skyscrapers, a revolution at a time that would stand for less than 3 decades. Crowds near Huntington Beach, California, gathered outside the Golden Bear nightclub, holding signs demanding its preservation as buildings got torn down for other uses. The venue had hosted performers such as Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, The Doors, Muddy Waters, and Jerry Garcia, helping shape modern music culture. In the late 19th century, before people had refrigerators at home, workers would cut huge blocks of ice from lakes and stash them in ice houses. The ice trade meant frozen water traveled by train and boat, letting families keep their food cold all summer long. Hoover Dam workers near Black Canyon, Nevada, drill into canyon rock while standing hundreds of feet above the Colorado River. The project reshaped the landscape and demonstrated industrial power on an unprecedented scale. Workers still work in high areas above the dam to fix things. This photo was taken in Vermont in 1910. 12-year-old Addie Laird stands beside a cotton mill machine surrounded by fast-moving spools that could run all day. She was in charge of them, along with many other children. This photo helps fuel public pressure for stronger child labor laws in the United States. On the Elbe River, Germany, on April 25, 1945, American and Soviet soldiers met at the riverbank and extended peace offerings to each other. Photographers crowd the scene to capture what becomes a symbol of the war's end in Europe. National Guard troops in Kent, Ohio, stand in gas masks on the campus of Kent State University during protests against the Vietnam War. Within days, a nationwide student strike spreads to hundreds of campuses, involving millions of students. Here's a photo of William Hutchings, age 100, in a cabinet card portrait. He was called one of the last living veterans of the American Revolution. He was born before the United States was even a country and lived long enough to have his photo taken during the Civil War. Wrestlers Maria Beer and Julie Frank locked into a twisting hold during a bout billed as the European Women's Wrestling Championship. Female wrestling wasn't common at the time, but these two did pave the way for the future of women's wrestling, starting as early as 1901. This photo from Chernobyl, Ukraine, taken in 1986, is the first photograph of the elephant's foot, which captures a frozen flow of corium formed when the reactor core melts and mixes with sand, concrete, steel, and uranium fuel. The radiation levels were lethal, showing the full extent of the carnage that the facility caused. A freight train in Arzamas, Soviet Union, is seen carrying hazardous cargo that exploded near the railway station, damaging nearby apartment buildings. Amateur photographs capture the aftermath of the disaster. In this one, people are picking up bricks and other pieces following the explosion. Courtney Brown, a professional frogman, tows a scale model of the Titanic, 55 feet in size, during film work on Raise the Titanic. This was a screen version of the novel, involving an attempt to raise the Titanic, a 46,000-ton wreck in the North Atlantic Ocean. The replica cost $5 million. After its period of working on weapons, Boeing, during the 1960s and 1970s, turned to spaceflight. This visual spaceflight simulator, Captured, offers pilots a chance to fly simulated missions, including lunar landings, lunar orbit, and rendezvous missions. The aftermath of the First World War leaves cities, industries, and populations strained. Veterans return home to economic uncertainty. Meanwhile, political movements compete to define what the post-war world should become. During the Iran-Iraq War, U.S. Army soldiers would occasionally have some free time to enjoy the finer things. This image shows these men around a table, sitting casually as a guy on horseback performs tricks, including jumping over the table without knocking anything over. After a powerful hurricane in 1938, Boston, residents spread soaked clothing across an entire rooftop to dry. Sun and wind served as substitutes for unreliable electricity in the pre-dryer era and helped those in the area who were hit by the hurricane acquire dry clothes. In Britain, 1920, an old Mark V tank, stripped of its weapons, was rebuilt into a tourist bus. With benches inside and a wooden top deck, it carries passengers along the Essex coast and to local fairs. A weapon of war becomes a novelty ride in peacetime. Warsaw, 1945. This city was totally destroyed after the war due to the plans for Germanization in old Europe. What is funny is that, after the razing, the city would later on be reconstructed. How? Through paintings, photographs, and measured drawings. A wounded man in Berlin, Germany, named Richard Sorge lies in a hospital bed. At the time, he served in the German army. Years later, he becomes a Soviet intelligence agent in Tokyo and warns Moscow of Germany's planned invasion in 1941. Singer Kate Smith signs a bomb at an airbase, showing the power of celebrity endorsement even back then. This was used to rally support and to solidify the U.S.'s position, reminding the people who the enemy is. At a United States medical clinic in 1944, a radiologist operated an X-ray machine while wearing heavy, though primitive, protective gear. The person's ribs and bones are seen clearly as the doctors stare. This gear would evolve along with X-ray safety practices. At the Tokyo Dome on February 11, 1990, underdog Buster Douglas defeated heavyweight champion Mike Tyson, shocking the sports world. At this time, Tyson felt like an unstoppable force, but would be humbled by Buster's crazy footwork and heavy jabs against the heavyweight boxer. In 1964 at Lop Nur, Xinjiang, China, following China's first nuclear detonation, designated Test 596, the People's Liberation Army cavalry moved in to secure the site, raising a hand in success. The explosion makes China the fifth nuclear-armed nation. This photo from 1981, taken in Giza, shows a man standing atop the Great Pyramid, built around 2560 BCE. Once the tallest structure on Earth for nearly 3,800 years, it remains a symbol of endurance across civilizations. He's up there smoking, celebrating his accomplishments in a place of complete and utter peace. From October 8th to 10th, 1871, the Great Chicago Fire tore through over 3 square miles of the city and wiped out thousands of buildings. Afterward, the city rebuilt with tougher fire codes. This is when Chicago began its rise as the home of steel-frame skyscrapers. A school bus in Cairo, Missouri is from a truck chassis and a wooden body transports students along rural roads. These vehicles were common during the Depression because of how easy they were to manufacture. And you thought your school bus was uncomfortable. Inventor Paul Cornu built a twin-rotor helicopter in Normandy, France, and briefly lifted off the ground. The machine uses a small engine driving two rotors. It's primitive, but an early example of the helicopters and planes that would be invented later on. The Battle of Midway in 1942 shows the Japanese aircraft carrier Soryu turning sharply as bomb splashes form a ring around the ship. The Battle of Midway would later conclude with 4 Japanese carriers lost. Factory owner Oskar Schindler poses with Jewish workers he saved by keeping their names on his factory lists. Roughly 1,200 survive because of these efforts, where they would have otherwise been left for dead or forced into labor camps. During the early 1980s, bluefin tuna were hauled aboard fishing vessels at a time when the species is still considered low value in many markets, despite its incredible size. Besides better cold storage units, the popularity of sushi helps the bluefin to find its audience. Boeing disguised a bomber factory with fake houses, painted streets, and rooftop scenery. From the air, the facility appears residential, protecting aircraft production from reconnaissance, while underneath, weapons of war were being manufactured to use in battle. A Soviet submarine surfaces as missile withdrawal begins following the US-Soviet agreement that ends the Cuban Missile Crisis. It slinks back into the water, retreating after the deal is finalized. The deal also leads to the removal of the US Jupiter missiles from Turkey. Defended for 58 days in 1942 by Soviet troops led by Sergeant Yakov Pavlov, the building dubbed Pavlov's House in Stalingrad survived the war and later became a memorial in Volgograd, a true example of urban resistance. On January 20, 1990, in Baku, Azerbaijan, a crushed taxi lies in the street following the Soviet military crackdown known as Black January. The car in this is utterly destroyed by the attacks that transpired. This event, which ended the lives of over 100 citizens, helped Azerbaijan's push toward independence the following year. During the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Israeli soldiers sat atop a Tehran 5 tank. In the photo, there is nothing but desert surrounding these soldiers. This tank is a captured and modified Soviet T-55 repurposed by Israel. A couple poses with their 16 children, illustrating how large families were more common during the baby boom era before widespread access to modern contraception. The age ranges were from adults to toddlers. Police and people in London clashed at the Governor's Square. The 1968 protests were for involvement in the war and turned violent. 300 people were arrested in the altercation against mounted officers, and over 60 were injured. A U.S. Marine in 1967 escorts a suspected Viet Cong through tall grass as an M48 Patton tank waits nearby. The photo captures the way in which patrols worked, with the M48 looming behind, ready to strike if one gets out of line. On October 25, 1943, in Western Germany, Captain Heinz Schwitzer used only a hammer and chisel to work on a dud bomb. One mistake could trigger an explosion, but it shows his skill and the risk he's willing to take to fix this bomb so it can be used. This photo, dated August 27, 1935, shows Eritrean schoolboys raising their arms during a public pledge to join Italy's colonial youth program. This is an example of childhood indoctrination used in war and other colonization efforts to garner support. On Christmas Eve in West Virginia, 1945, 5 soldier children vanish after a house fire, though their remains are never found. Afterward, rumors of sightings fuel the news for years to come, becoming one of the most well-known child disappearance cases. A U.S. soldier in Leipzig, Germany, escorts 2 German prisoners near city streetcars, later capturing them. Leipzig was secured weeks before Germany's surrender, so this is more like cleaning out streets. This photo is from Vicksburg, Mississippi, taken in 1905. The paddle steamer Mary H. Miller rests in a floating dry dock for repairs. Sternwheel boats like this were built for shallow rivers, using flat hulls and rear paddle wheels to move cargo efficiently through the Mississippi River system. In Cape Canaveral, Florida, 1967, the Vanguard TV-3 rocket explodes seconds after liftoff on live television, creating a giant wall of flames. The failure pushed the United States to accelerate its space program, leading to the launch of Explorer 1 month later. This photo of Hamburg, Germany, taken in 1943, shows entire neighborhoods lying in ruins after massive air raids during Operation Gomorrah. Tens of thousands of homes are destroyed, forcing widespread evacuation. When people returned to these cities, many of them looked like Hamburg did here. A U.S. Navy aircraft aboard the carrier Monterey lands off-center and ends up hanging over the deck's edge. The pilots landed with a very low margin of error, displaying their incredible skill, or perhaps luck in this case. An Iraqi soldier lifts improvised weights inside a trench. The weight used is a piece of machinery. The war's front lines stretch for hundreds of miles, and long periods of waiting lead soldiers to invent ways to maintain strength and keep their gains nice and strong. Here's a scene from the Civil War. A young boy who escaped slavery sits with Union soldiers. The Union Army would take in people who escaped slavery and call them contraband of war. Pictures like this show how the war's meaning changed over time, especially after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. German troops in Antwerp, Belgium gather inside the Cathedral of Our Lady after the city's surrender during the First World War. Antwerp's fall forces the Belgian government into exile. The cathedral itself is famed for housing major works by Peter Paul Rubens. In 1884 at Niagara Falls, New York abolitionist Frederick Douglass posed with his second wife, Helen Pitts, a white reformer and editor. The photo shows the roaring waters of the falls in the background. Their interracial marriage sparks national controversy, yet the couple remains together until Douglass died in 1895. A glass plate photo from the 1890s catches an Irish girl racing on a 3-wheeled bike. You can actually see the motion blur, which was rare back then. Tricycles like this were a big hit with women and kids before the safer 2-wheeled bikes took over. Russian immigrant poets in Manchukuo, 1941, gathered for the first all-Manchukuo poetry competition. The event reflects how diaspora communities preserved the Russian language and literature far from Europe after 1917. A personal album from the Soviet Union in 1941 shows an Austrian mountain infantry from the 137th Mountain Infantry Regiment advancing across open ground during the opening phase of Operation Barbarossa. The open mountains were common during Russian military campaigns. This photo from Londonderry, New Hampshire, taken in 1867, shows Flora Stewart at 117 years old. Back then, before birth certificates were common, it was hard to know for sure how old someone really was. People made claims like this all the time. Sometimes they were true, sometimes they were lies. At Wake Island, a wrecked F-4F Wildcats of Marine Squadron VMF-211 sit on the airstrip after the Japanese capture of the island. Despite overwhelming odds, the small garrison holds out for nearly 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor, demonstrating its power. John Logie Baird recorded one of the first television images of a human face.